Hi dear students, welcome to the next class. Please subscribe the channel for not to miss any videos. So today we'll be talking about general anatomy of nervous system, second part. So I have already done the first part. If you have not listened to that, please see that. After that, you can start hearing this class. So let's talk about neuroglial cells here and also the spinal nerves in little detail. I have already mentioned spinal nerve on my previous classes. Now we will continue with some details. So let's begin. There are neuroglial cells which are of different types: astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, microglia, ependymal cells, capsular or satellite cells. So neuroglial cells are many. They are much more than the neurons in the nervous system. Astrocytes, they are star-shaped cells. They provide a structural framework and metabolic support to the neurons, and they will take up the extra neurotransmitters whatever released in the extracellular space in nervous system. So they act as scavengers and maintaining the proper activity of the neurons. There are two types of astrocytes: protoplasmic astrocytes, which are seen in the gray matter mainly of the central nervous system, and fibrous astrocytes, they are seen in the white matter. They both of them have a lot of processes, and these processes reaches near the blood vessels and also the pile surface of the brain. Uh, in the blood vessels or near the blood vessels, it forms some process which looks like foot, called as the foot process of the astrocytes, or it is also called as the perivascular foot of astrocytes. They binds with the outer aspect of the blood vessels and contribute for the formation of blood-brain barrier. Fibrous astrocytes with a star-shaped appearance and extending a lot of processes from it, reaching the blood vessels, expanding as a foot process, perivascular foot process of the astrocytes. Other neuroglia also can be seen. Oligodendrocytes, oligo means less, so the processes of the oligodendrocytes are less in number, and they are responsible for the myelination and the insulation, right, of the central nervous system. And they almost looks like astrocyte, but they have less processes. So myelination is done by the oligodendrocytes in central nervous system. In the peripheral nervous system, myelination is done by Schwann cells. There are other type of neuroglial cells. Oligodendrocytes can be seen. Neurons, which are nearby it, also can be seen. Fibrous astrocytes. Microglial cells are a member of a mononuclear phagocytic system. The main function of this is phagocytosis of the debris and the damaged structures in the central nervous system. Now, this differs from other type of neuroglial cells in which it is derived from bone marrow, whereas other type of neuroglial cells, they are derived from neural tube, which is a part of ectoderm, which also give rise to the skin. Now, skin, when I say the skin, the epidermis of the skin is derived from the uh, ectoderm. Anyway, so the microglial cells, they are basically originating in the bone marrow, and they migrate into the brain, into the central nervous system, or the into the nervous tissue as the microglial cells. Let's see clinical correlation of the astrocytes, I'm sorry, the microglial cells. So the in case of AIDS, the HIV, the virus attacks mainly the microglial cells, and the microglial cells produces certain cytokines, chemicals. This in turn attacks the neurons, or it is toxic to neurons. So HIV directly doesn't attack the neurons, but indirectly by attacking the microglial cells, and that produces cytokines which are toxic to neurons. Ependymal cells are lining the ventricles, the internal cavity of the brain. There are different cavities like lateral ventricle, third ventricle, and so on. Capsular cells are surrounding the neurons, which are seen in the sensory and autonomic ganglia. This is a neuron, and surrounding that, the capsular cells are present, which gives uh, protection to the neuron. Cell bodies of the neuron and the satellite cells, or the capsular cells. Now, when I was talking about astrocytes, I was mentioning about the blood-brain barrier is formed by the astrocytes. So this blood-brain barrier is formed by astrocytes and have three layers of it. The difference between normal blood vessel and blood vessel inside the brain. So a blood vessel which is inside the brain has an endothelium. So here also you have the endothelium and a basement membrane. Endothelium are tightly packed. There is no gap between the endothelium without fenestration, and there is a basement membrane surrounding it, and also on the outer aspect of it, the perivascular foot process of the astrocytes can be seen. So all these three together forms the blood-brain barrier. Now let's see the spinal nerves. So I have taken a class on spinal nerve on the previous session. So please go through that. So an area of the skin which is supplied by a pair of spinal nerve or a single segment of the spinal cord is called dermatome. So there are different dermatomes. So this can be seen on the either side. Dermatomes like T2 dermatome, T3 dermatome can be seen, L2 dermatome, lumbar spinal nerves. T are the terms for thoracic spinal nerves. And let's see the formation of the spinal nerve here. The spinal nerve is formed by a ventral root, which is the anterior root, and a dorsal root, posterior root. The spinal cord has horns like ventral horn and the dorsal horn. Dorsal horn give rise to the sensory root, and the ventral horn give rise to the motor root. And together it forms the trunk of the spinal nerve, which again divides into rami. Dorsal rami, which is comparatively small, and the ventral rami is big, that goes to the anterolateral part. Posterior rami goes to the posterior aspect to supply the muscles and the skin of that region. Dorsal root also has a swelling which is called the dorsal root ganglion, spinal ganglion, or the sensory ganglion, in which there are a collection of cell bodies of pseudo-unipolar cells can be seen. Now, after joining the ventral root and the dorsal root, the trunk of the spinal nerve, from here a nerve arises, a branch arises called recurrent meningeal nerve. Now, after that, the division occurs. There is a posterior ramus and the anterior ramus. Now, posterior ramus and the anterior ramus, they are present throughout the spinal nerve, throughout the area from base to the coccyx, or all the spinal nerves. But in some areas where, like in the neck region and in the lumbar and the sacral region, these areas, the ventral rami, they form a nerve plexus which supplies the limbs. For example, brachial plexus, which is formed in the cervical region and the thoracic region, that supplies the upper limb. Lumbar region, sacral region, lumbosacral plexus, that supplies the lower limb. So remember here, the plexus are formed by the ventral ramus of the spinal nerve. Dorsal ramus do not participate in that. As I said before, the dorsal ramus goes back and supplies the muscles of the back and the skin over that area. Now the ventral ramus, which is arising from here. Before that, let's see the diagram once. So this is a diagram of the spinal nerve, anterior view, where the spinal cord can be seen having posterior horn, anterior horn, and the anterior horn is connected or it is giving rise to the anterior root, and posterior horn giving rise to the posterior root, where you have a ganglion, spinal ganglion, both of them together to form the trunk of the spinal nerve, dividing into dorsal root, dorsal ramus, ventral ramus. Now, the ventral ramus is connected to the sympathetic trunk. Sympathetic trunk is lying on either side of the vertebral column. They are paired structure made of sympathetic ganglia. So there are a lot of sympathetic ganglia. Sympathetic ganglia usually corresponds to the spinal nerve, but in some areas they are fused, like in cervical and the thoracic region. But otherwise, they are supposed to have the same number as that of spinal nerve, so which is 31 pair, because the spinal nerve is connected to the sympathetic trunk of both sides. So they are supposed to have 31 pair of the sympathetic ganglia. And the sympathetic ganglia are connected by some nerve roots, and altogether it forms the sympathetic trunk. Now, what's the connection of sympathetic ganglia with the spinal nerve? That's what we are going to discuss now. Now, before that, let me tell you that the spinal cord usually has an anterior horn and a posterior horn, but in some areas like thoracic, lumbar, and the sacral region, there is an extra horn that is called the lateral gray horn, where there are some cells, some collection of cell bodies are present. In thoracic and lumbar region, there are preganglions for the sympathetic system, preganglionic neurons for the sympathetic system, whereas in the sacral region, it is for parasympathetic system. So in the sacral region, there are preganglions, or the collection of cell bodies which are related to the parasympathetic system can be seen on the sacral region, whereas thoracic and lumbar region, there are preganglions of the sympathetic system. Now, what they do? Preganglionic neurons. Now, why they are called as preganglionic? Now, the ganglion that we are referring here is this ganglion, sympathetic ganglion. So, before this, anything before this is called preganglions. So, preganglionic neurons, they are present here in the lateral gray horn. So, I'm talking about sympathetic system. So, here they send its fibers, and that passes through the ventral uh, ramus of the spinal nerve. They reaches the trunk. They passes through a connection, or a connection here called white rami communicants, or it can be also called as preganglionic fibers. It's preganglionic fibers, they are myelinated, so it is called as white ramus. So what they do, they relay in the sympathetic ganglia, and they make a synapse here. So there are different possibilities. I'm talking about the first possibility, where it makes a synapse here with the sympathetic ganglia. Now from here, the neurons which are present here, the cell bodies, they they are called as the postganglionic cells. Now these cells they send its fibers, and that fibers goes back to the spinal nerve as gray rami communicants, or postganglionic fibers. So we have a preganglionic fiber, or the white rami communicants. Postganglionic fibers, they are the gray rami communicants, because they are not myelinated, and they enter into the spinal nerve. Now after entering the spinal nerve, it is distributed through the spinal nerve. So wherever the spinal nerve goes, the gray rami communicants which are coming from the sympathetic ganglia, that goes along with that. Now here it goes into the dorsal ramus. It goes back to the dorsal ramus and supplies the skin, and whatever part which is related, or which is supplied by the dorsal ramus, and it goes to the ventral ramus. So wherever the ventral ramus goes, it supplies that area. So the sympathetic ganglia is connected to the spinal nerve. So gray rami communicants are present throughout the spinal nerve. So 31 spinal nerves will have the gray rami communicants. Now, regarding the white rami communicants, I said they are coming from the cells which are located in the gray horn of the uh, spinal cord. Now, And I said gray horn is present in thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. Thoracic and lumbar region, the gray horn, the cells here are related to the sympathetic system, whereas in the sacral region it is related to the parasympathetic system. So we'll talk about the sacral segment later when we deal with the parasympathetic system. Now let's talk about sympathetic system. So the preganglionic fibers or the white ramic communicants are coming from the lateral gray horn. They are connected to the sympathetic ganglia. Now this connection, the white ramic communicants, they are seen only in the thoracic and lumbar region. Or in other words, I can say that the gray horn, the lateral gray horn, which is related to the sympathetic system, are seen only in the thoracic region and the lumbar region. Other areas, there are no sympathetic uh, neurons is seen. So the collection of neurons which are related to the sympathetic system are seen only in the thoracic and lumbar region. I'm talking about these neurons, the preganglionic neurons, or the neurons which are supposed to connect the central nervous system to the sympathetic chain. So these are seen only in the thoracic and lumbar region. So that means these fibers, white ramic communicants, they are the connection of the sympathetic ganglia with the central nervous system. So if this connection is cut, the sympathetic ganglia will not get any information from the central nervous system, and it works by itself. Now, let's see once again the white ramic communicants, the fate of white ramic communicants. White ramic communicants, they, I said before that they synapse in the sympathetic ganglia, and gray ramic communicants they arise and they reaches the spinal nerve. But in some cases, the white ramic communicants do not relay here. They go to the upper aspect, superior aspect, or they go to the inferior aspect. Now, why is it so? We have the sympathetic chain which is ranging, which is starting from base of the skull up to the coccyx. Now, all the sympathetic chain should get a connection from the central nervous system. But I said that the lateral gray horn, which is related to the sympathetic system, is seen only in the thoracic and lumbar region. So, of course, thoracic and lumbar region will get the white ramic communicants. But what about the other neurons? I mean, what about the other sympathetic ganglia, which are located in the cervical region, in the sacral region? They also need connection from the brain, or they also need connection from the white ramic communicants. So suppose if this is thoracic level spinal nerve, and the white ramic communicants is connected to the ganglia here, yes, this ganglia gets the connection. But what about the cervical ganglia? For that, white ramic communicants has to travel upwards. Now similarly, let's think that this is the lumbar spinal nerve and the lumbar sympathetic ganglia. Now the white ramic communicants reaches the lumbar sympathetic ganglia and it gets supply. True. But what about the sacral sympathetic ganglia? It also needs supply from the white ramic communicants. How it is possible? It is possible by the white ramic communicants, and that white ramic communicants has to travel downwards to reach the sacral sympathetic ganglia, so that all the sympathetic system chain will get connection from the white ramic communicants. And another fate of white ramic communicants is white ramic communicants, they don't relay here, they don't go upwards or downwards, they go directly into the viscera. There are some ganglia which are related to the viscera and that related to the sympathetic system. They are called collateral ganglion. So they go to this ganglion. So they are again collection of cell bodies there, and they relay here, and from there postganglionic fibers arises and they supplies the organ. Now, when we say about the white ramic communicants or the preganglionic fibers, in the sympathetic system, they are very short because the ganglion, sympathetic ganglion, is lying very near to the very near to the spinal cord. So the white ramic communicants are very short here, or the preganglionic fibers are very short here. Whereas the postganglionic fibers, they are very long because they have to go again into the spinal nerve and it has to get distributed through that. Whereas in the parasympathetic system, you will see something opposite. So that we'll discuss that time. So this is the fate of white rami communicants here. Now let's see the other part of the picture here. So the anterior gray horn, which give rise to the efferent fibers, motor fibers that passes through the spinal nerve, the ventral ramus and trunk and reaches different areas. It supplies the muscles. Voluntary activities are controlled by this fibers. Now this is the posterior root where spinal ganglions are seen. Spinal ganglion are the collection of cell bodies of the pseudo-unipolar neurons. There are multiple in number. They have a central process and a peripheral process. Central process, obviously, they'll go to the spinal cord, whereas the peripheral process, they go in different directions. They can go along with the spinal nerve. They can go to the anterior. They can go to the anterior aspect of the body, anterolateral aspect of the body through the ventral ramus, or they can also enter into the dorsal ramus. They may also enter into this area that is connection to the sympathetic ganglion, and they can even pass to this connection of the sympathetic ganglia. I said there are some ganglia which are called as collateral ganglia. So they just pass through the ganglia and they supplies or they reach the viscera. So whatever the sensations from the viscera, they can be carried by these fibers. So remember, these are fibers from the pseudo-unipolar cells which are located in the spinal ganglion. So they take the sensation. For example, stomach, distension of the stomach, the feeling of hunger, all those things are taken by these fibers, and that goes to the spinal cord. Now, Now, don't think that only this side we have the sympathetic and this side only we have the dorsal root ganglia and all these connections. No, all these things are present on single side. So whatever you're seeing here is present here. Whatever you're seeing here is present on this side. So it is complicated, but at the same time it is so interesting. So I said here that we have a sympathetic connection and we have the efferent root, that is motor root, and the sensory root. So when we say a spinal nerve that reaches one part of the body, that means that part will have a motor area or motor component, or the spinal nerve will have a motor component, a sensory component, and also autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system also can be supplied through the spinal nerve. Here we have seen how the sympathetic system is going to supply through the spinal nerve. When we discuss the parasympathetic system, we will again see how the parasympathetic system is going to enter into the spinal nerve. But that happens in the sacral region. Anyway, so let's continue with the next. So we have white rami communicants and gray rami communicants. And white rami communicants has different fate. So the white rami communicants that is present in the thoracic and the lumbar region, the thoracic region and the lumbar upper 2 or 3 lumbar segments. White ramus can be seen, and they enters into the sympathetic ganglia for the synapse and leaves back through the gray rami communicants, or the gray rami communicants which are arising from the sympathetic ganglia goes into the spinal nerve. Now gray rami communicants are present throughout the spinal nerve, whereas white rami communicants are seen only in the thoracic and lumbar region, upper 3 lumbar region, and the whole thoracic region. Now this diagram will explain the connections of the sympathetic ganglia. So this is supposed to be the L3 sympathetic ganglia, the ganglia which is related to the L3 spinal nerve, and this is sympathetic ganglia related to L4 spinal nerve. So the difference between this is the L3 ganglia, I'm using the term L3 ganglia, has two connections, white rami communicants and gray rami communicants, whereas the L4 will have only one connection, that is gray rami communicants. Gray rami communicants are the fibers which are starting from the sympathetic ganglia, or the cells which are inside the sympathetic ganglia, the group of cells, they gives out the cell processes, and they are called as the gray rami communicants. Now the gray rami communicants which are entering into the spinal nerve, they are supplied through the spinal nerve through different parts of the body. And the sympathetic nerves, they innervate smooth muscles in the wall of blood vessels and also the sweat glands which are associated with the hair follicles. This is again a picture of the spinal nerve, the dorsal and the ventral root forming the trunk of the spinal nerve, dividing into dorsal ramus and ventral ramus, and connections with the sympathetic ganglion. So each spinal nerve carries efferent fibers to the involuntary structures and also efferent fibers to the muscles which are voluntary. So because of the connection with the sympathetic ganglia, the spinal nerve is getting extra contribution from the autonomic nervous system where it can control the involuntary actions. Now, let me give you an example of how sympathetic system works. Now, your sympathetic system usually works when you are in a fear. Suppose you're seeing a lion in front of you suddenly, and the response would be either run or fight. So I would take running as a preference. So to run, I need a lot of sympathetic activity. Your heart rate has to increase. Your skeletal muscle has to increase. I mean, to increase its power. So for that, sympathetic activity is required. So the sympathetic system acts. The sympathetic chain acts here, and through the gray rami communicants, the information reaches to different parts of the body to act accordingly. The heart rate is increasing, and you're going to run. Now, we'll see the scenario in detail how it works. So you see the line, and the the image of the line is entering into the eyeball, into the retina. It goes via optic nerve, it reaches the brain, and the brain sent information to the sympathetic trunk to act. So this information that is coming from the brain, the CNS, to the sympathetic chain is via the white rami communicants. So if white rami communicants are cut here, that means the thoracolumbar region, if I cut the white rami communicants, the sympathetic system will no longer have any communication with the central nervous system. So the same scenario, the lion. How the sympathetic system will come to know that there is something called lion in front of you? It's not possible because this if white rami, if it is cut, then the information from the brain does not reach the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system may act according to its own wish, but it will not be proper. It will not be on the proper time. So that has to be, or that occurs only when it has a connection from the central nervous system. If the connection from the master is cut, then the sympathetic system will work according to its wish. So that is what the importance of the white rami communicants. So if the white rami communicants, thoracolumbar region, if it is cut, then the sympathetic system will not get any information from the central nervous system. So when the lion comes in front of you, you may not be able to run because the sympathetic system doesn't get the information that there is something panic in front of you. Now let's see the parasympathetic system. Parasympathetic system is called the craniosacral outflow because here the outflow comes in the cranial region and the sacral region. So we said that the lateral gray horn is present in the thoracolumbar and the sacral region. Thoracolumbar region related to the sympathetic chain, whereas the sacral region is related to the parasympathetic system. Now, rest and digest. There are some activities done by the parasympathetic system: salivation, lacrimation, urination, digestion, defecation. And three decreases are heart rate, airway diameter, pupil size. And the cranial outflow is through the cranial nerves, namely oculomotor, facial, glossopharyngeal, vagus. So you can remember by remembering this mnemonic: only fools go wandering. Now the sacral outflow is through the sacral pelvic nerves. Let's see how this happens. So in the sacral region, second, third, and fourth sacral segments of the spinal cord has the lateral gray horn through which the parasympathetic outflow occurs, and through the cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, 10 cranial nerves. Parasympathetic system, the outflow is through thoracolumbar, thoracic level, thoracic nerves 1 to 12, lumbar 1 and 2. Now let's see the cranial outflow of parasympathetic system. So the here we'll again see the ganglion. The ganglion is located here. We'll take an example of ciliary ganglion, which is related to the eye. Now ciliary ganglion, these are parasympathetic ganglion. Parasympathetic ganglion is present very near to the effector organ. So this organ here is eyeball. So ciliary ganglion is located very near to the eyeball. Whereas look at the sympathetic ganglion. Sympathetic ganglion is located very near to the spinal cord. Now here the ganglion is located near the effector organ. So the preganglionic fiber, the preganglions which are located in the brainstem, they sense the process, and these are preganglionic fibers. They have to travel a lot to reach the ganglion because this ganglion is present near the organ. So somehow with the help of the cranial nerves, it reaches near the ganglion. There it synapse. From there, it the other set of neurons are here. They send the fibers. They are the postganglionic fibers, and they reaches the effector organ. So postganglionic fibers are very short in parasympathetic outflow, whereas the preganglionic fibers are long. Whereas in the sympathetic system, preganglionic fibers are short, postganglionic fibers are long. Anyway, these are other ganglions, pterygopalatine ganglion related to the nose. Then we have a submandibular ganglion, otic ganglion. So all these ganglions are getting preganglionic fibers, and they pass through the cranial nerves. So this is in case of cranial outflow. Let's see the sacral outflow. So sacral outflow, there are lateral gray horns in the sacral segment, which has the preganglionic neurons. So they send its fibers through the anterior root, enters the trunk, through the ventral rami, it reaches the organ. Now in the organ, near the organ, there are, as you can see here, there is a ganglion which is related to the urinary bladder, and there it synapse. Now the ganglions will send the fibers which are very short that supplies the urinary bladder, and it is seen in S2 to S4 segment, the gray horns, the preganglionic neurons for the parasympathetic system, and they passes through pelvic splanchnic nerves. So basically, we have seen the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. The activity of sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system is contradictory. They act differently. But for a single organ, both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems are required. They act differently. Thank you.